Azure Virtual Network is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. It enables many types of Azure resources, internet, and on-premise networks to securely communicate with each other. In this video, we will be covering virtual network concepts, best practices, communication, network traffic, and virtual networking integration for Azure services. In the end, we will also share details about our free Azure Solution Architect Masterclass, which will not only help you understand basics, but it will also give you an idea of the learning path to follow. It will be helpful, especially when you're preparing for Azure Solution Architect certification, which requires you to clear 2 exams, that are Microsoft Azure Architect Technologies AZ303 and Microsoft Azure Architect Design, that's AZ304. For the certification exam, you should have an understanding of Azure Virtual Networking. Welcome to another episode of Azure video series from K21Academy, where we take you from complete beginner, covering configuring infrastructure, authentication, and securing data solution for the cloud and Azure storage, to all the way identity and security, business continuity strategy, deployment mitigation, integration, and infrastructure strategy, including how to prepare for the AZ303 and AZ304 certification exam. We have taken a clip from one of our certification training program on Azure Solution Architect, that's AZ303. And in this clip, our instructor will talk about Azure Virtual Networking. So, this is a clip taken from a module on Implement Virtual Networking. Let's hear from our expert trainer on the same.
Thank you all for joining. So we will start with our first module, which is Implement Virtual Networking. So this includes a virtual network and virtual network peering. So these are the concepts that we are going to learn today. So basically people will think that they have to first learn virtual machine. But the first thing you should think about isn't a virtual machine, it's a network. So when you are thinking from an architecture's perspective, the first thing that we have to think about is the network layout, not how the virtual machine. So finally, when you have the networking architecture done, you just have to place the virtual machine. It will automatically go to that subnet, create a NIC or the network interface card and get it connected. So that's the reason why we go with networking first. Virtual networks it's also known as VNets are used in Azure to provide private connectivity between Azure virtual machines and other services. VMs and services that are part of the same virtual network can access one another. By default, service outside the virtual network cannot connect the services within the virtual network. However, you can configure the network to allow access to an external service, including your on-premise servers. So we will review how virtual networking is done, how to choose between virtual network peering and VPN gateway, and a comparison when to choose what. Then we will talk about virtual network peering, and finally we will have a demonstration on how to create a VNet peering and how to delete or modify that. So let's start with virtual networking. So like I said, it is used to provide private connectivity between Azure virtual machines and other services. So network addresses and subnets are not trivial to change once you have set up. If you plan to connect your private company resources to Azure services, you will have to consider the topology before putting any VMs into the place. That's the reason why we are taking the the networking session at the first place. Azure Virtual Network is a fundamental building block of your private network in Azure. VNet enables many types of Azure resources such as virtual machines to securely communicate with each other, the internet and on-premise network. VNet is similar to the traditional network that you had operate in your own data center, but brings additional benefits of Azure infrastructure such as scalability, availability. So some of the concepts that are related to VNet are address space. So when creating a VNet, you must specify a custom IP address space using public and private. That's RFC 1918. That's a set of consider those as a set of laws. If you're already working as a network administrator or a system administrator, you might know what is RFC 1918. So Azure assigns resources in a virtual network a private address from the address space that you assign. For example, if you deploy a VM in a VNet with address space 10.0.0.0/16, the VM will be assigned a private IP address like 10.0.0.4. Next concept is subnet. Subnets enable you to segment the virtual network into one or more subnetworks and allocate a portion of the virtual network space to each subnet. You can deploy Azure resources in a specific subnet. Just like in a traditional network, subnet allows you to segment your VNet address space into segments that are appropriate for your organization's internal network. This also improves the address allocation efficiency. You can secure resources within subnets using network security group. Regions, VNets is scoped to a single region or location. However, multiple virtual networks from different regions can be connected together using a global VNet peering. Subscription, VNet is scoped to a subscription. You can implement multiple virtual networks within each subscription and Azure region. And now Azure offers a cross subscription VNet peering. That means you can peer with the subscription, one subscription to another, VNet from one subscription to another, VNet another subscription. Going forward, we will talk about the best practices. As you build your network in Azure, it is important to keep in mind the following universal design principles. So ensure that non-overlapping address spaces. So basically what happens is, as a beginner, every time you create a virtual network, what happens is the default address space Azure will show as 10.0.0.0/8 or 16. So people tend to use that. You can have overlapping. That means I can have VNet 1 with the same space and VNet 2 with the same space. But if I try to connect them, let's go for a peering or something, the spaces are overlapping. So always ensure that it is not overlapping so that you can have a peering or something done later. Otherwise, you may have to, delete everything and recreate it. Perfect. So make sure that your VNet address space or the CIDR block does not overlap with your organization's other network ranges. Secondly, your subnet should not cover the entire address space of the VNet. Plan ahead, reserve some address space for your future use. It is recommended to use fewer large VNets than multiple small VNets. This will prevent management overhead. Like, let's say you are creating /24 VNets and you have to create a lot of them to accommodate all your hosts. So rather you can go for /8 or /16 and do subnetting, so that in case you want to change something at the VNet level, you just have to change the /16, not a large number of /24s. Finally, secure your VNets by assigning network security groups to the subnets. Great. So we will talk about several scenarios, some like communicating with the internet, between Azure resources, with on-premise resources, etc. And there is another slide that is a continuation of this. So first we will talk about communicate with the internet. So all resources in a VNet can communicate outbound to the internet by default. You can communicate inbound to a resource by assigning a public IP address or a public load balancer. You can use public IP or public load balancer to manage your outbound connection. So that's how you communicate with the internet. Next, we will talk about communicate between Azure resources. Azure resources communicate securely with each other in one of the following ways. So through a virtual network. You can deploy VMs, several other types of Azure resources to a virtual network, such as Azure App Service environments or Azure Kubernetes Service, which is AKS, and virtual machine scale sets, also known as VMSs. So this is how the services can talk to each other. Then you can do the same thing via a virtual network service endpoint. So you can extend your virtual network private address space, the identity of your virtual network, to Azure service resources such as storage accounts, SQL databases, or a direct connection. Service endpoints allow you to secure your critical Azure services only to a virtual network. Next one is through VNet peering. You can connect virtual networks to each other, enabling resources in either virtual network to communicate with each other. So this is done over virtual network peering. Azure virtual networks you can connect can be in the same or different Azure regions. Finally, coming to on-premise, how to connect to on-premise resources, we have a point to site, also written as P2S VPN. So it is established between a virtual network and a single computer in your network. Each computer they want to establish connectivity with the virtual network must configure its connection. This connection type is great if you are just getting started with Azure or for developers, because it requires little or no changes to your existing network topology. The communication between computer and a virtual network is sent through an encrypted tunnel over the internet. Site-to-site VPN, established between your on-premise VPN device and an Azure VPN gateway that is deployed in a virtual network. This connection enables any on-premise resource that you authorize to access a virtual network. The communication between your on-premise VPN device and Azure VPN gateway is sent through an encrypted tunnel over the internet. Finally, we have the express route. It is established between your network and Azure through an express route partner. This connection is private and very fast. Traffic does not go over the internet. So in the next slide, we have, this is the final part of the review, and we will talk about how to filter network traffic. So you can filter network traffic between subnets using security groups or NVAs, or also called network virtual appliances. To talk about security groups, network security groups and application security groups can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules that enable you to filter traffic to and from resources by source, destination IP address, port, and protocol. Talk about NVA. NVA is nothing but a VM that performs a network function such as firewall, WAN optimization, or other network function. How you can route the network traffic. So Azure routes traffic between subnets, connected virtual networks, on-premise networks, and internet by default. You can implement either one of the below to override the default routes that Azure creates. First one is a route table. You can create a custom route table with routes that control where the traffic is routed for each subnet. This is pretty much similar to the route table that we have seen in our operating system, like Linux operating system or Windows. So you have a route table, right? So basically you can write what is the next hop, or if it is coming from this computer, you have to route it to this one. What would be the next hop, and all those things you can manually configure. Next one is BGP routes. So if you connect your virtual machine to your on-premise network using Azure VPN gateway or express route connection, you can propagate your on-premises BGP routes to virtual networks. Finally, we have virtual network integration for Azure services. Integrating Azure services to an Azure virtual networks enables private access to the service from virtual machines or compute resources in the virtual network. You can integrate Azure services in your virtual network with the following options. First one is deploying dedicated instance of the service into a VNet. The services can be privately accessed within the virtual network and from on-premise network as well. Secondly, we can use private link. This is a new feature to access your privately a specific instance of the service from your virtual network and from your on-premise network. You can also access service using public endpoints by extending your virtual network to a service through service endpoints. Service endpoints allow you to service resources to be secured to a virtual network.
So, that was a clip taken from one of the modules of our step-by-step training program on Azure Solution Architect certification, including exams AZ 303 and AZ 304. I would like to invite you for a free masterclass on how to kickstart your journey as Azure Solution Architect, right from learning basics, implementing storage account, virtual networking, and getting certified by using our step-by-step 12-week roadmap to go from complete beginner to a certified Azure Solution Architect. If you're interested, register for a free class by going on to K21Academy.com/AZ30302. I highly recommend you to go through this free class to see what to expect in the exam, learn basics about Azure Solution Architect certification, and to get a demo on deploying Azure Container Instance. So, K21Academy.com/AZ30302. Please click on the subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future videos. I will see you in another episode of Azure video series from K21 Academy. Till then, take care.